All right, Skinny, not a lot supposed to happen in preseason at training camp, but we had an eventful day. Let's start from the back end. Had a scare there with T. Higgins, who still doesn't have his contract extension.
Yeah, and that's the thing. For those that maybe haven't seen what happened or heard what happened, a deep pass to T. Higgins. He was being covered by Cam Taylor-Britt. He went down trying to catch the ball. Nick Scott came across, tried to leap over both of them. Well, T never went all the way to the ground, so he couldn't quite leap over the top of him. He ends up landing on T. Higgins, who was a little bit slow to get up, walked gingerly to the sideline, had the training staff look at him. I talked to both in the locker room. Nick felt really bad about it because he said, hey, I'm a veteran. I know what I'm supposed to be doing. I tried to jump over him. Didn't work out so well. T said he was feeling fine. But there's no doubt that contract has got to be playing on his mind when something like this happens. You know, he didn't participate in the Wednesday practice with the Packers, and I think that was by design, that he didn't want to put himself in peril. He obviously wasn't going to play in the preseason game Friday, so no peril there. You know, 11 on 11 sessions in practice, you can usually be controlled and not worry about it, but it takes one weird situation to maybe do that. And in the contract year of all things, that's got to be weighing on a guy's mind for sure.
Speaking of injuries, Travion Williams is out. He's getting close, but he's still not there. But, you know, there's only so much time left for him to win that number 2 job.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he's all likelihood, even if he comes back to practice on Wednesday, I don't imagine he would get a lot of reps on Friday, if any. Game. So maybe, you know, he gets a chance to show himself in that third game. But a lot of this was pick up the blitz, trying to get in that third down back roll. I mean, that's hard to do in a limited period of time. And you're right. And I thought, you know, Chase Brown played pretty well on Friday. Zach Taylor wasn't effusive in his praise of Chris Evans and Chase Brown today in his press conference, but he also didn't diss their performance either. So I think it was what you expect from at least a rookie in his first game. Some of the blitz pickup stuff was good, maybe some not so good. I talked to Chase after the game Friday. He said he felt like he did a pretty good job in that regard. And, you know, people have talked about it. He talked about it too. He's a willing blocker, and I think that's a big part of it. You know, Chris even has admitted he wasn't a very willing blocker. He's trying to make himself into that. And Charlie Goldsmith at the Inquirer had a great story on that regard, some of the things he did this offseason to kind of get him a little bit more toughness to take on blitz pickup. It sounds easy, right? Hey, that's your job, go do it. But with a 260-pound linebacker or defensive end or whatever it is coming at you full speed, and you're not the biggest guy in the world, it does take a lot of guts to stand in there and take it. But if you want to win that role, you got to be able to do it.
To his credit, I have seen him making more effort and making some good blocks in practice. What's your evaluation? You know, obviously neither of them is Samaje Perine, especially when it comes to pass blocking. How do you think they adjust their offense depending on which one of those three it is?
Yeah, I mean, let's just say, for example, it doesn't work. You know, Joe Mixon, that has not been his forte, right? So he's not part of that mix probably. Although I think you'll see him probably more on third downs this year than we have in the past, because Samaje was so good in that role as a receiver and as a blocker, and even if you wanted to run the ball for him a few times. You know, if Chase or Chris or Travion, for whatever reason, they just can't handle it, I mean, at some point you may have to put Drew Sampler, a tight end, back there as that blocker on third down. I don't think we're there yet. We haven't certainly seen it in practice, but that would have to be in the back of your mind. Or you go to the waiver wire and pick up a Leonard Fournette and Ezekiel Elliott, somebody like that, to fill that role. Maybe the third down back isn't on this roster right now. I think he probably is, but maybe he's not.
Maybe with a scheme change, though. And you know, watching Chase, he had an incredible career at Illinois, set records. He's a little undersized.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, he's tough. And the quickness he showed and kind of the juke ability he showed on Friday, I thought was pretty good. You know, he took that little dump pass across the line of scrimmage, 21 yards, and he did it like that very quickly. It reminds me a little bit of Gio Bernard. I mean, Gio wasn't the biggest guy, but you know, he was built. There's no question, and he would stand in there and pick up the blitz. He loved the block for sure. And I think at least Chase is willing, and honestly, size-wise, I think they're comparable. But you're right, he's not a big guy for sure, no doubt about that.
All right, you mentioned Joe Mixon. Obviously, Joe was not at practice today because he was in court. Where do you think that thing evolved? I guess it's impossible to say, but what's your inkling?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we followed along Christian Hauser, our colleague on Twitter today. He was tweeting all about it, and you know, they had the girl who accused Joe of the menacing, and there were some hard lines of questioning for her. Tomorrow we're going to get more. They're going to I think, introduce a video that if it shows a gun, then, I mean, I don't know if it's cut and dried. Don't forget this, and I want to remind people of this, even if Joe Mixon is found not guilty in this case, the NFL can still suspend him a game or two or three or whatever it decides. If it decides, hey, you know, this is an issue, this is a problem, and you tie that into what happened in Anderson Township, I mean, he could still be facing a suspension from the league. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but that doesn't mean he's clear from not being suspended by the league. And I got a feeling if he is found guilty, then the league will definitively have to suspend him in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, we've seen plenty of cases in the past where the judicial system didn't do anything, but the NFL certainly did. My evaluation watching them, and they were going at it pretty hard today, is that the defense won, and I was a little alarmed at how easily they got to the backfield and how much Browning and Simeon had to run around.
Yeah, and I'm not looking for an excuse here by any stretch, because again, the first team offensive line is playing in camp,
right.
So those guys were out there. It did rain for a portion of camp. You have to wonder, if you're the guy trying to hold somebody from coming in, how much that might have played a role. Both quarterbacks really struggled with accuracy today. Again, I don't know how much the rain played a part of that, because it wasn't like they were great on Friday either. But I do know, for Zach Taylor's sake, and if you remember, I think from the press conference, might have been media day or maybe his first press conference, he was asked about practicing in the rain. He wants to practice in the rain, because as long as it's not storming, and it wasn't. This was just a good old downpour at times and a good old shower. He wants players to have to play through that, to play with a wet football, know that feeling of trying to catch a wet football, blocking in the wet, throwing a wet football. I think he got exactly what he wanted today out of that. Again, with having to do that without the storm coming down, just good old fashioned rain, and you may play through that once or twice this year.
Well, it is Cincinnati, so we're expected to be pretty calm the rest of the week. They're off tomorrow. Wednesday they'll work out. Thursday they fly to Atlanta. Friday night's game is on Local 12 from Atlanta against the Falcons.